Was it me?
Probably the reason why the other guys couldn't find it.
All right, we're in John chapter 4. And start in verse 43. For those of you that are keeping score, this one will probably be short. Run up all the time. They had to fix the clock to make sure I didn't run long, but
We like to give you a hard time.
John 4.
John 4:43. This is one of those passages where we get time frames. You remember when we started John, we talked about it, that he'll start a procession. This was the first one he did, this is the second one he did, and then he just stops. Or, this was on the first day, and this was the third day, and here's the seventh day. Oh, well, I'm finished telling you what day it is. It just kind of drops off. So this is the second of the miracles done at Cana of Galilee. So chapter 4, verse 43. After 2 days, Jesus left for Galilee. Now he himself had testified that a prophet has no honor in his own hometown. So where is he not going in Galilee? Not going to Nazareth, right? He ran into problems earlier in Nazareth. They weren't very welcoming because he began to kind of tell them who he was, and they all thought, well, no, this is Joseph's kid. He's nobody. We know him. And they were offended by him rather than believing in him. Yet when he arrived, the Galileans welcomed him. They had seen all the great things he had done in Jerusalem at the feast, for they had gone there as well. So we didn't go to Nazareth because that's hometown, but there are some Galileans, certain groups of Galileans, that had been down to Jerusalem and had seen the miracles that he had done. Now keep in mind, this is a group of people from around Cana who have gone down to Jerusalem and seen miracles. So that'll be important when we get down to the end of this passage. There'll be a question we want to try to answer because they had been there as well. Verse 46, once again he came to Cana in Galilee, where he had turned the water into wine. And there was a royal official whose son lay sick at Capernaum. When he heard that Jesus had come from Judea to the Galilee, he went and begged him to come down and heal his son, who was about to die. So there's a few interesting things that we can pick out of that. We're back with a Cana connection again. This is the second time in John that he's been in Cana. We're never told exactly what that connection is. But the first one is a wedding feast, and his mother is there, and his brothers are there. So it kind of lend itself to the idea that maybe, at least on Mary's side of the family, there was a family connection at Cana. But we're never told who it is or exactly why he would have been going. But Jesus gets invited to the wedding. His disciples go with him to the wedding. Mary is invited to the wedding. Jesus' brothers are at the wedding. So there's a common thread in there somewhere, but we don't know exactly who these folks at Cana are. And this is the second time that John tells us that he's spending time there. So he's not going to Nazareth because he's not well received at Nazareth. The folks around Cana seem to be more open to him. This fellow that comes to find him has come from Capernaum. Now, Capernaum is 17 miles from Cana, so almost a full day's walk. So he leaves Capernaum because he knows that Jesus is at Cana, and he walks all the way to Cana to find him, to make sure, to try to get Jesus to do something about his son who is sick in Capernaum. Right? There was a royal official whose son lay sick at Capernaum. And when he heard that Jesus had come from Judea to Galilee, he went and begged him to come down and heal his son, who was about to die. So he doesn't know the exact condition of his son after he leaves Capernaum. So can you imagine? There's no way to communicate. You're not, I always bring up cell phones, but I mean, we've got them, love them or leave them. And if we're somewhere and we need to contact somebody, it's just second nature now to pick up the cell phone and call somebody. And they might be, 3 counties over at Walmart. We might be in Amarillo, but we go, oh, well, I need to ask them a question. We just pick up the cell phone. We've got ours in our pocket. They've got theirs in their pocket. This guy walks 17 miles. His son's at the point of death. He's going to try to go quickly enough to get Jesus and get Jesus to come back to Capernaum and heal his son. Why does the guy from Capernaum know that Jesus is a healer? That's another question that's going to be interesting, important at the end of this thing, so keep it in mind. But
At the wedding.
do what?
He was at the wedding.
Might have been at the wedding, might have been in Jerusalem, might have seen miracles that were done early on in Capernaum. Right? On Sunday nights, we've been looking at Jesus' early ministry from Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Last week we looked at Mark, where there are so many people crowding around the house that they have to let the guy down through the roof. Right? So if it's in this same kind of time frame, then maybe this guy has already been around when Jesus did a miracle. It's hard to make all the miracles go linear, try to make a list of them. Well, first he did this and then he did this. Although John, again, at the end of this passage, will give us a number, and we'll have to wrestle with that number a little bit. So when he heard that Jesus had come from Judea out of Galilee, or come from Judea to Galilee, he went and begged him to come down and heal his son, because his son was about to die. When you say that there was a royal official from Capernaum, what kind of royal official are we talking about?
Mayor.
He's the mayor. So he's the most important man in Capernaum by far. People bow to him as he walks down the street. He's probably a member either of Herod's family or he works for Herod's kingdom. There are some people that think that he's a Gentile, and in this area, a Gentile official wouldn't have been that far-fetched because they lived pretty close to a lot of Gentiles. But probably this guy is a Herod, which caught my attention because here's Jesus doing favors for people that are in Herod's conglomerate. The Herod that is in power at this point is going to kill John the Baptist, and then later on he's going to try to get Jesus killed. He's the one that's sitting the throne when Jesus is taken to him, and Jesus just won't say anything to him. He wants to see Jesus do a trick, wants to hear him teach, wants to see him do a miracle. Jesus won't even talk to him, so he sends him back to Pilate. Right? So this guy works for that guy. Tom?
Wouldn't he be a Jew?
Yes. Yeah. This one's probably Jewish. We'll look in a minute at one in Matthew that is definitely a Gentile, which is an odd thing, but
Would they have called him a royal official?
sure. Yeah. The Herods, Herod was the king. He was a vassal king, but he was the king. And his family, and I can't ever remember which is which, I think he was a Hasmonean, but that family had been powerful for a couple of hundred years, and his dad had been, super powerhouse in that region for a lot of years. And he just came into that power. So anybody that was associated with him had some clout because they worked with or for Herod. And if this guy actually happened to be a Herod, even that much more. Jesus said, unless you people see signs and wonders, you will never believe. So instead of immediately saying, oh, I've got compassion for you, and I'm sorry that things are going difficult for you, he just says, you only came because you want to see a sign. And John will do that 2 or 3 times in his gospel. He'll point out that Jesus would just get frustrated with people because they were always looking for a miracle. It's not always about what Jesus had to tell them. He's trying to get across the message that his Father gave him to bring to them. And what they want is miracle after miracle after miracle. And you're only as good as your last miracle. If you raise the dead on Monday, you better be able to raise 2 on Tuesday, or people will, move on to something else. So he comes to Jesus and he wants a miracle, and Jesus says, well, you're never going to believe unless you see a miracle. Well, that fits with John's writing, with his game plan for his gospel, right? At the end of the gospel, I keep reminding us of this. John says, there were lots of other things that Jesus did that I didn't write down, but I wrote these down so that you would believe. And so all of these signs that he writes about have a reason, and that's so that people will believe. Well, in this passage, Jesus says, hey, unless I do miracles, you're not going to believe what I tell you. And pretty much all through the New Testament, I think that's the pattern. You've got a miracle performed, and then a group of people come and get taught, and they believe, not just because of what they hear, but maybe even more so because of what they saw. You see miracle, Philip does miracles, draws a crowd, teaches them about Christ. They're all baptized. They don't get the Holy Spirit, so John and Peter go lay hands on them and they get the Holy Spirit. And there's just that, that mix between, we've got something to tell you, but to get your attention, we're going to do miracles to get you to pay attention. So Jesus, he says, this is the problem. I'd love to just teach you, but unless I do miracles, you're never going to believe. Well, the man is not dissuaded. He says, you've got to come with me or my son's going to die. Jesus says, your son will live. Go ahead, go home. That's the big test. Right? He knows of Jesus doing miracles where Jesus is there. Right? If he knows about the lame man at Capernaum, he knows that Jesus was right there and spoke to him. If he knows about the leper, he knows that Jesus was right there and actually reached out and touched the leper. But Jesus is telling him, you just go home and it's going to be all right. Notice Jesus doesn't teach him anything. It's just the miracle. Jesus doesn't teach him anything. It's just the miracle, right? Jesus starts with, unless I do a miracle, you're not going to believe me. But then he doesn't teach him anything. He just says, go home. Your son's going to be okay. My guess is later on that this official becomes a believer, that he's going to want to find Jesus later and hear what Jesus has to say. But at this moment, the only thing he cares about is, 17 miles over there, my son's about to die. So Jesus says, just go home. Tom?
Isn't he already a believer in that he's coming to Jesus because he had to know that Jesus had the power to do this.
Yeah.
And he believed that he could. It's a question of, would he?
Okay. There are shades of faith that are going on in the Gospels. There are people that believe enough to hope that Jesus will do something for them, compared to people that Jesus has done something for them, compared to people who just saw something done and then heard what Jesus said and believed. There's some people that hear the preaching and believe because of the preaching. I don't think, did he do any miracles in Samaria? I kind of doubt it. He wasn't prone to doing miracles for the Samaritans, per se. He's there for a couple of days, and they said, we now believe because what we have heard, not just because of what you told us.
Wasn't the leper that he healed a Samaritan?
There was one. Don't know whether that's in this time frame or not, but it could be one of the 10. When he gets home, he's probably talking about it. So there's just so much of a mixture going on of people that are seeing miracles, people that are hearing about miracles, people that are hearing Jesus preach in person, and so levels of faith. So yeah, he believed something, or he wouldn't have gone all that way.
He couldn't believe that he was a miracle worker, but that he could do miracles, but he didn't necessarily have to believe, or might not have believed that he was the Son of God.
Yeah. Well, I think at this point, very few people get that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's kind of hiding it. If we take what Mark says, that Jesus performs these amazing miracles and tells them not to tell anybody, they all tell. But I mean, there's that sense in which Jesus isn't wanting everybody to know who he is yet. So is he still preaching, repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand? Is that still the main sermon material? We're getting close to the time frame where he does the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew and in Luke. So we get more of a broad brushstroke of teaching. But even that, he doesn't, in the Sermon on the Mount, he doesn't teach them that he's Messiah. They start figuring it out, but that's not part of the sermon material, is to say, hey, if you paid close enough attention, you'd realize that I'm the Son of God. That develops over a much longer period of time. But the important thing is, the man believed him. It says he took Jesus at his word and departed. While he was still on the way, his servants met him with the news that his boy was alive. He inquired as to the hour when his son had recovered, and they told him, the fever left him yesterday at the 7th hour, which is what time? 1 o'clock p.m., yeah, an hour afternoon. So it left him at the 7th hour. The father realized that this was the very hour in which Jesus had told him, your son will live. And he and all of his household believed. Okay, what did they believe at the end that they didn't believe in the middle? So that's our question, right? He's stepped up a level. He believes that Jesus is more than just an itinerant preacher. He certainly can do miracles, but he already kind of knew that. So what's this level of belief compared to what he believed before? And here it's he and all of his household. We get used to that phrase in Acts, right? Every time somebody in Acts is obedient, they and all of their household are baptized. So you've got Lydia and the Philippian jailer. You know, when the head of the household is converted, everybody's converted. So now he's a Jesus follower. I guess you could designate him a disciple at this point. Don't know, there's no mention of his disciples saying, okay, now that you believe, you need to be baptized, right? The Jesus' disciples were baptizing a bunch of people. We know that they did baptize, but that's not the point of the story, right? So we don't get that the rest of what did his belief do as far as his life was concerned. But he realized that was the very hour, right? I was with Jesus at 1 o'clock, and he told me to go home. So it's probably been another, 15 to 20 hours. He gets back home, and they say, well, it was yesterday at 1 o'clock. Oh, it makes perfect sense that that's what happened. Now, this was the second sign that Jesus performed after coming from Judea into Galilee. So we get a marker. It's his second miracle since he came from Judea into Galilee. What was the first? Changing water to wine. The last trip, right? He's in Cana, changes water to wine, leaves Cana, goes to Capernaum for a little bit, goes back down to Jerusalem and Judea for a while, comes back up, and when he gets back to Cana, he does another miracle, and John picks that one up and says, this is the second sign he performed after coming from Judea into Galilee. So, was there a sign that he did on this trip that he doesn't tell us about? Was there just the two signs in Cana all together, or does he mean this was the second sign that Jesus did, period? If you took all of his miracles, these were the first two. Well, like I said, we've got a few little context clues in here. Some of the Galilee bunch had been to Jerusalem and they had seen the great things he did in Jerusalem. So it's not just the second miracle that he did in all, because they saw him do some in Jerusalem before they came back home. It's probably not just the second miracle that he did when he got back on this trip to Cana. So we're probably talking about, since he tells us in chapter 2, he uses the same phrase, just a different number. What Jesus did here in Cana of Galilee was the first of the signs through which he revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. And again, some of them already believed something. In fact, Andrew says, we have found the Messiah. But after he does the water to wine, then they believed in him. So again, the language is sometimes hard to know. And then he leaves and comes back after doing a lot of miracles in other places. And then John says this was the second sign that Jesus performed after he came from Judea into Galilee. So it's an odd reference, an odd number. But this is one of those sections where he gives us a lot of numbers. After 2 days, he left for Galilee. It was about 1 o'clock in the afternoon when the healing took place. This was the second sign that Jesus performed. And then all these numbers just kind of, just go away. He's not going to give us any. There's not a third sign that he did. He just stops the counting now that he's gotten to this one.